Welcome back to INN's Headlines and Beyond. We were talking when we left off from the first part about the impact that politicians have, the real impact in inflation that politicians have in their policies on real prices. As I said, when you're calculating inflation, if you're a worker and you're out there calculating inflation, then this is going to be something that's going to be on the new channel that's coming up at the end of this week. It's going to be a weekly show. It's going to be on the global economic situation. And you need to start watching this because the whole point of this economics channel that I'm putting out is to show the average person what the bankers know. And if you understand that, then you'll be able to sort of start correcting a lot of the economic issues that you're having in your life. But as I say, going back to the economic calculations of inflation, without political interference at all, the factors in inflation have to do with the cost of materials, the cost of overhead, that's the building, and then part of that cost of the building, which is known as the overhead, includes the salaries, how much you're paying your employees. Let's assume your building costs stay constant, and so does your material costs. These things are considered to be constant factors. Although they're not really, they do go up and down, but they go up and down for, again, the same. One of the primary reasons they go up and down has to do with, again, this whole employee situation in terms of what you're paying your employee. If the cost of the employees go up, then because the way you calculate your price includes the cost of the employee and your overhead, and that's your major portion of how you calculate things, then the cost of the product goes up. But you don't just put it up a little, because you have to put it up. The profit is a percentage of the cost, right? So just because, let's say you have, in most countries, let's make a very simple profit margin, and this most companies have a larger profit margin. Let's say you have a 10% profit margin. If something costs you $100 to make, including all your labor, your cost of the building, all the material, everything costs you $100. You're going to put a profit of 10% on there. Well, what happens is that when you take 10% of $100, that's $10. Right? $10 is your increase in price, so you now have $110. Now let's say your cost due to labor goes up, so now that product costs you $1,000. What's the profit on there? It's still 10%, but 10% of $1,000 is $100. So you've got, your price has gone up 10 times what it was at $100 to the new price at $1,100. Right? From 10 to 100 is 10 times. That's the price. That's your inflation. That's that inflation is, if 100% is $1, 10% is 1,000. That difference there is, that's 1,000% inflation. Now this is not what we're talking about. We're talking about here in the situation that we're talking about now, in terms of the extent of it. This was a simple calculation. But what you are seeing, and I've seen this in the grocery stores, is that you've seen 60, 70, 80% year over year inflation on the price of your of the goods like milk, eggs, and cheese. Most people watch, and this is the statistics, when they calculate inflation, they take out the goods like milk, eggs, and cheese in terms of the price of in terms of how they calculate. They calculate only on what they call surplus goods, like VCRs, TVs, and stuff like that. Well, the problem is that if you're doing a price index on TVs or cars, the cost of these things are continuously going down because as new stuff comes up, the older stuff becomes obsolete, and there's a depreciation in price. Where there isn't a depreciation in price, and is in your food. I mean, and this is your food is your basic essential cost, and you're going to spend money on food before you're going to spend money on TV. So if you're going to sit down and calculate the real economic impact of inflation, you want to look at it at the real impact that affects the real household. That's how you're going to calculate. And this is the difference between an academic economist and a real economist. A real economist works within the real economy, and the academic economist works within hypotheticals and academic exercises and concepts, and never really touches on the reality of what's actually going on, in the cities, in the market, or whatever. They're not looking at what's going on around the clock, which does affect companies. And so, as you start saying, "Oh, we'll put on this," we're going to put on a tax, a subsidy, and that's what a subsidy is. A subsidy given to any company always comes back in the form of a tax on the citizen. Basically, if you are in a country and they're subsidizing a TV station, you're paying for that TV station. It's coming out of your taxes. If you're in the same thing is, and this is what's going on with Obama. Obama says, "Oh, we don't have a green energy tax." You do have a green energy tax because you've got subsidies to these industries. When the industry gets a subsidy, you pay for that subsidy as the taxpayer in your taxes, and you can bet if they're spending more than what they had been spending before, that extra amount of money is going to come out of your taxes. That they're going to be expecting more from you. And what you've seen in the United States is that, and this is true of all the other countries, and that's why I say the other countries, except for the United States, really isn't a true democracy. Everyone else is sort of more of what they call an elected monarchy. It's socialism to one degree or another. And you become, under socialism, an indentured servant to the state. And then what it means, your debt, right, that they create. So they create the debt, but you're forced to pay for that debt that the government creates. And the government is not elected to serve you in a socialist state. You serve the government. The government in a socialist state like Canada, like Europe, and around the world, in Great Britain, they're there as the crown. The politicians assume the role, the right, the privileges of the crown, and you serve the crown as a subject, as a citizen. And this is exactly how things have evolved in Canada. This is how things have evolved in Australia. Anywhere you see a socially left government, this is the way things have evolved, and Obama is moving the United States in that direction. And it's easy to sort of hear who is talking about what and where they stand. If you hear about social justice, if you hear them talk about bringing in subsidies to create jobs for a particular industry, these are all socialist terms. And these subsidies are not going to help the average person. They're going to go to a large corporation because large corporations employ unions, and this is a benefit to the unions. And the socialist governments have a lot of union friends. So, and it's not that the union workers are going to do well. It's the union bosses that will do well, because there's this collusion among the union bosses and the social left politicians while they're talking about supporting small business, they're not really talking about supporting small business. The regulations come in and they kill small business through these backdoor means of regulation, while exempting larger corporations like GE, and this is why GE pays no taxes. GE pays no taxes because it's being given a break for all the union support that it's been giving. Right? It supplies a lot of jobs to different unions. This is why GM got its bailout the way it did because GM has a large union in it, and this is the same thing up in Canada. All the large union shops got bailouts, and so what happens is that you're not getting this translation of jobs from this so-called subsidy to create jobs trickling down into the regular economy. What's happening is it's going into the union coffers, into the state coffers, into the political coffers, and then just sort of staying there, and they're giving you a piece or a chunk of it. And they expect you to be grateful for it afterwards. So if you're going out and you're listening to a politician, and you're deciding who to vote for, it doesn't matter who the person is. Listen to what they say and look at the record of the party that has been there before. If the party is consistent in bringing in Orwellian and draconian laws that come in and take money out of your pocket, that put you in jail, don't vote for them. It's that simple. If they talk about being constitutional and small government, that means they're going to stay out of your life. They're not going to be putting you in jail for stupid things, like not having siding on your house. Then that's the person you want to vote for. They're not going to do anything for you, but they're not going to come in and make your life a living hell. So when it comes down to election, in terms of this primary, and this is something. If you're on the primary trail and you're getting the ability to ask these politicians questions, and this is what the media should be doing, but isn't, asking these tough questions. When you're presented with this political policy here. Are you going to put somebody in jail for this? Where is your vote on this particular position? What's your policy on here? And we never see policy out front. Policy is always pushed to the back. It's always, oh, we'll get to it when we get to it. But no. And this is what if you want to elect a person, you got to sort of stick and make sure that, and this is, for me, it's easier to do with the Republicans because they're saying they're for smaller government. They're saying they're for the individual business. They're saying for all. If that's the case, if a politician isn't saying that, they're saying that you can get involved. That this is something you can participate in and make sure that your taxes stay low. That the government does not interfere with the lives of the ordinary citizen and sort of push the prices of everything up. And this is kind of where I think a lot of we start moving over and start looking at foreign policy. Foreign policy is, and this is a kind of a bizarre thing, foreign policy is looking in somebody else's backyard, ignoring what you've done wrong, and criticizing somebody else's domestic policy. So foreign policy is looking at domestic policy from the outside. So we see our domestic policy. We see a lot of the human rights abuses going on with the police, as in this Zimmerman case here, in terms of you have somebody overstepping their bounds of authority and killing somebody simply because it was an issue of authority. This person's authority wasn't respected enough, so that poor teen got shot because this guy didn't get enough respect for his authority. And when you see things like this is the sort of the condition that we have in the United States, and then you go look at Syria and say, oh, these Syrian people are so horrible. What are they doing? They're brutalizing their people. Oh, what are they doing? They're doing the exact. And if you read the Amnesty International reports and you read the Human Rights Watch reports, they're doing the exact same thing that we're doing domestically. So when you sit down and you start looking at the situation there, and you want to look at what's going on, and this is what I did. You start picking up your sources and start finding things. You see that way back when Bibi and his happy-go-lucky gang of people who have these wonderful fantasies of how things are going to go, seem to have been able to convince everybody in the West, particularly a number of the socialists, who are running this so-called New World Order, which will eventually destroy itself, because none of these New World Orders have ever succeeded. There's never been a successful New World Order. All you have to do to understand this is go read any of the works by Dostoevsky to understand it. Dostoevsky initially, Dostoevsky, by the way, was a satirist. His books are not to be taken literally. They're satire. They're making fun of the hallucinations of the social left, these socialists. And so when it comes to sort of seeing that that Bibi and his friends was able to convince people that creating an Israeli-style democracy in the Middle East, and starting with Pakistan, was a good idea. All we've seen throughout the whole thing is failure. And this is now when we get to we bring up go to the Mali, this coup in Mali, which now has been confirmed that the state has been overtaken and the president's been overthrown, and what was initially considered to be a revolt has now turned into a full-blown coup d'état. And as you go digging into this, and you want to find out, well, who did this and what they're talking about, and you'll find out that this is a spillover from the Libyan War. Let's not call it a war. Let's call it it's the Libyan UN policing action, in which they went to save all those Libyans, those hundreds of Libyans who were being killed by Gaddafi. So in order to kill in order to protect the 100 citizens or so who were being killed, they killed 30,000. Right? And then they kind of forgot the weapons that they had given all these people. Oh, by the way, did anyone remember to bring back the weapons? And so where did these weapons go? These weapons ended up in Mali. And so a lot of the weapons that NATO had handed out ended up pushing Mali into this coup. And what do you hear from the West today? Oh, all the Western democracies condemn the coup d'etat in Mali and hope that the rightfully elected democratic leaders will be restored. Really? Who gave them the weapons? And by the way, because the UN gave them the weapons and NATO gave these people the weapons, shouldn't they be charged now and tried for war crimes? Shouldn't there be now an initiation of regime change? Obama has lost his legitimacy to rule. He now needs to transition peacefully from his position. Not later on. Now his legitimacy to rule is over. He's lost that legitimacy. When they killed 30,000 people inside of Libya, he lost that legitimacy. When that soldier killed those people in Afghanistan, he lost his legitimacy. When they killed those people using drone attacks in Pakistan, he lost his legitimacy to rule. He now needs to transition from his position so that we have a new president in there. His reign is over. So we need to have this regime change. We need to have this transition, a peaceful transition, hopefully. And this is actually something that if the Republicans really stop fooling around with and got their act together and really start behaving as they're supposed to behave as Republicans, as real Americans, and look at domestic policy, all of foreign policy from an American point of view, and going out there and protecting individualism, then they can go up to Obama and say, it's time for you to go. If this is what you've said to everyone else and you support the UN, then now it's time for you to go, Mr. Obama, because your legitimacy to rule has now ended. And it's now time for you to peacefully transition out. But they can't say that because a lot of their foreign policy does not meet constitutional limits. And again, as I said, you start seeing where people start sitting outside of these constitutional bounds and they cherry pick the constitutional issues. And you start looking, oh, is this guy a constitutionalist? Does he really believe in the Constitution? Well, let's take a look at Glenn Beck's page, or O'Reilly's page, or any of the Republicans' page who say they want a strict constitutionalist government in there. Well, do they have the copyright on their page? Do they prevent people from downloading their materials and using it for research or whatever? Is their content being prevented from being openly discussed and talked about? Using these proper references. Well, if they are, they're now outside the Constitution. They're supporting censorship through the DCA. And I saw the copyright on Glenn Beck's page. I've seen the copyright on O'Reilly's page. I've seen the copyright, the Fox, which is supposedly a Republican network that cares so much about the Constitution, it doesn't allow any downloading from its page. But then again, neither does the so-called the the intellectual left. You go over to Jon Stewart's page or Stephen Colbert. You can't download their stuff for free. You can't post and remix the stuff up on there and talk about the work by and using their clips without having any issues with the Digital Copyright Act. You can't do that. As soon as you do that, you're going to be flagged and taken down. So what happens, and this is what I call these bozos, the ignorant left, who are these Hollywood actors. And ignorance doesn't mean they're stupid. Ignorance means that they know what they're doing and simply don't want to see this. So they're talking about all this freedom. They're talking about all this brotherly love on the left. And what happens? The poor people get shafted. The people who are down at the bottom. Because what happens? Every time you see this, Warren Buffett. Oh, I can certainly afford to pay a few more dollars on my taxes. Do you know how much money he's actually offshored? Take a look at his charity. Take a look at the tax status of a charity, and you will see that all charities and foundations are tax shelters. Then now take a look at Warren Buffett's tax shelter. Look at Bill Gates' tax shelter. Look at all these. Go to any of these wealthy Hollywood morons, and this is an insult here. I'm going to say these ignorant people. Look at their tax statements. And you don't even have to look at the tax statements. Ask yourself, do they have a charity? Do they have a foundation? If they do, they've got a tax shelter. And they're not paying what they should be paying on their taxes. They're taking money off the table. If these people are so gung-ho for paying taxes, then put all the money, take it out of the tax shelters, don't count your tax shelters, and put everything on there and pay a little bit more. There's nothing preventing these people from paying more money if they want to pay more money. As a matter of fact, you take Bill Gates, Warren Buffett, George Soros, and Barbara Streisand, and all these people on the left, you put their money together. These people they could have paid for the healthcare bill, free healthcare for everybody in the United States, and there would be no taxes to pay for. There wouldn't be any insurance. There would be no need to pay for insurance because they could cover it all. But they don't want this. They talk about it, they fight about it, they say, oh yeah, the people should be, and then they don't. They push it off to somebody else. And this is sort of, then when they go into these areas like George Clooney was talking about the what's going on in Africa, what's going on in Sudan, and this is what you also have with the Coney 2012. I mean, this guy, I feel sorry for this guy because he's when a person's younger, or even like 25, there's still a lot of idealism. The reality of what's going on in geopolitics and in the world really hasn't hit and sunk home yet. They haven't had their legs knocked out from them enough to sort of get the idealism of what they're thinking about knocked out. And it's not that you have to have that idealism knocked out. You have to understand that no matter what your ideal is, it sits in the world of reality. And if you ignore that reality is going to destroy your idealism. Any ideal is going to be destroyed by reality. You need to see, one, does your idea fit within reality? And if it does fit within reality, you've got to see how to get it to make it fit into that reality. It's not going to do it by itself. This is something that you have to work on, and you can't leave it to somebody else. You can't lobby for somebody else to do this. And this is sort of, when we're seeing what's going on now in Mali, and as we start watching the situation over the weekend to see what happens in Mali, well, no surprise, there's gold in there. And I went to see who these people were, because we're talking about some of the tribes that were connected to Gaddafi, and how this sort of spilled over to Gaddafi. And these were the camel riding people of the Sahara, the desert people. And these are the ones who are on the camels, and they're all wrapped up, and just their eyes are showing. And this is due to the desert has nothing to do with religion. This is more of a practical way of protecting themselves from living out in the desert the way they do. And you see how far these people migrate. They migrate all the way from Libya and they were supporters of Gaddafi. And so basically, when you look at the Gaddafi lines, Gaddafi was supported by the Africans, while the rebels were supported by the Europeans. The rebels were more European oriented. They're more French. They're more Italian. They weren't specifically Libyan. In terms of being African, the ones who supported Gaddafi were more African. They were dark skinned, and they were pushed out of Libya, and then down this corridor and into Mali. This is where things were. And with them came all the weapons. And as this weapon supply, these weapons that have sort of pushed the incidents that were going on, that's going on in Mali, into what it is now. And again, you get some more. You've got some more jawboning on CNN and with Hillary Clinton on these issues. But again, it's gotten to the point now, and I'm starting to source out some information that CNN, Anderson Cooper, and this is not unexpected to see the Anderson Coopers involved in a story fix. That some of the tapes that were aired on CNN regarding Syria were doctored and altered in terms of report. I mean, you're getting situations where in these countries, in these things, if you understand your background in terms of covert wars and understand how the new method of warfare actually works with media manipulation and the ability to manipulate media, you can see how media reporting can become an asset of a covert intelligence or a covert operative. And you can manipulate it to such a degree that even though the reporter knows they're being manipulated, they go along with it anyways. And this is what appears to be happening on CNN. I have gotten some footage with some indication that a large chunk of the reporting that we've seen on CNN regarding the situation in Homs has been staged. I need to really start verifying some of this stuff a little better. I've got some good stuff on there. I found multiple sources, but I still want to dig further and see exactly how much manipulation was going on. Because right now, once you start seeing this manipulation, I've seen this manipulation, and even the Human Rights Watch has now started reporting about the abuses that are being done by the rebel forces in the Free Syrian Army. That they are actually they're actually killing people who oppose them. The arguments before that I had, not the argument, the sources that I had found before showing these killings from these Al Qaeda pages, from these jihadist pages, were indeed correct, and this leads me to believe that the sources that I'm getting about the CNN reports and the fabrication of the CNN reports are also indeed true, because they also fall in line with reports I've heard about Al Jazeera faking reports and BBC faking reports. So when this occurs, and you start hearing that the U.S. is warning Syria to comply with the UN resolution to start this transition to a new regime, to a new government, that all what's going on right now is warmongering. That this is a setup to take down Syria, and it's not going to turn out well, because all you have to do is look at all the other attempts to make the Middle East into an Israeli-style democracy. All you have to do is to take a look and see how that worked out, and you know where this is going to go. Anyways, that's it for the weekend. I will see you on Monday. I will be uploading another episode of Daniel Jorgens The Prize, and episode 3 is coming up over the weekend. Watch for that and watch it. All right, thank you very much. Have a good evening.